Okay, let's jump right in. We're tackling a huge and, let's be honest, pretty uncomfortable question today. As AI gets smarter and smarter, what is it that makes you truly irreplaceable? If you're an enterprise architect or really any kind of knowledge worker, this isn't just a thought experiment anymore. It's real. And just to set the stage, let's start with this bombshell of a quote. Just let that sink in. If your value proposition is that you can do this carefully and consistently, you've described a tool, not a person. Wow, that cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? If your main selling point is just being steady and reliable, well, you're not describing a human's unique value. You're describing what a tool does. This really sets the stakes for everything we're about to talk about. So let's frame this conversation the right way. The real threat from AI isn't about wiping out the entire profession of architecture. Not at all. It's about automating very specific types of work within it. And that brings up a really crucial distinction in how you and I should be thinking about our own value. This slide just lays out the split perfectly. On the one side, you have work that's paid for time. You know, the classic hamster wheel of hours clocked at your desk. The market is quickly starting to relabel this as just a coordination function. And guess what? Those exact tasks, organizing things, aligning people, processing information, that's what AI is getting incredibly good at. But on the other side, you've got paid for capability. This has nothing to do with time. It's all about the unique outcomes, the results that only you can create. That's where the real, irreplaceable value is hiding. And here's the big shift. Look, it's always been true that most work is kind of average. It clusters around the mean. But what's totally new and frankly a little terrifying is that the economic value of that average, standard, anyone can do it type of work has absolutely collapsed. I mean, think about it. Tasks that used to be a solid entry-level gig can now be done in literally minutes by a junior who has the right AI assistant. So that brings us right to the central idea of this whole explainer. The threat isn't to all architects. It's to a very specific kind of architect. And once you see that, this reframes the whole problem. It's not about survival anymore. It's about evolution. And boom, this slide just shows you the two paths you can take. On one side, you have the automatable architect. They're competent, sure. They're great coordinators. They redraw vendor diagrams. They follow the frameworks they're given, and they're paid for their time. But then on the other side, you have the irreplaceable architect. And they're not coordinators, they're researchers. They don't just follow frameworks, they produce original ones. They're driven by a unique point of view, and they are paid for that unique capability. So the million-dollar question is, where does that irreplaceable quality even come from? It's not from a certification. It's not something you can just memorize from a textbook. No, it's forged in the fire, in the friction of real-world experience, of wrestling with messy, complicated problems, of forcing yourself to write down your thoughts, and of connecting ideas in a way that nobody else has quite managed to do before. It's all about developing an original point of view. So how do you actually build that point of view? Well, our source gives us this fantastic metaphor that I think makes it all click. I want you to think of your knowledge not as a long list of facts, but as a set of building blocks. See, when you're starting out in your career, your mind is basically a pile of bricks. You've got all these individual pieces of information, right? A regulation over here, a new deployment pattern there, a war story about a project that went sideways, but they're all just separate facts. They're just sitting there, disconnected in a big pile. But the senior, irreplaceable mind, it's totally different. It's not a pile, it's an interlocking structure. Every new piece of information, every new brick you get, doesn't just get tossed on the pile. No, it clicks into place. It connects with other bricks, it strengthens the entire structure, and sometimes it even forces you to reorganize everything you thought you knew. That right there, that is true architectural thinking. And that brings us to this incredibly powerful takeaway. The race isn't about who can collect the most bricks, who can accumulate the most facts. I mean, hoarding information is a losing game when you're competing against a search engine, right? The real work, the place where you create real value, is in wiring those bricks together, in creating the connections that lead to real insight. But there's a really common trap that stops almost all of us from wiring those bricks together. It's this comfortable, easy, and kind of addictive loop of just constantly consuming information. You know how it goes. It starts here. We spend our time reading endless analyst reports, just trying to feel like we're staying on top of things. And then we move on to listening to all the industry podcasts, probably at 1.5 speed, just trying to cram as much in as we can. And we top it all off by attending the latest vendor webinars. And all of this activity, it makes us feel super productive, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, or the end of the year, this is the one question we all have to ask ourselves. After all that input, all that consumption, what tangible, original thing can you actually point to? What have you produced? This slide offers such a simple but totally profound way to reframe this. The big shift we have to make is from consumption to research. See, consumption is passive. You're just reading to stay informed. But research is active. You're reading with a purpose to answer a specific question that you've already written down. The first one makes you slightly more informed, maybe a little bit replaceable. The second one is the first step toward creating something that only you could have written. And that brings us to the final and most important part. How do you actually make this shift? How do you go from being a consumer to being a producer? Well, it all starts with one really powerful first step. Now first, let's just acknowledge something. This is not easy. The pull to just read one more article, listen to one more podcast, it's strong. Production is way harder. Your first draft is going to be messy. But this is the critical distinction we have to make. It is the difference between passively feeling smart and actively being useful. And here is the call to action. It's a beautifully simple 3-step process. Step 1, write down 5 questions about your work, your domain, that you don't have a good answer for. Step 2, look at that list and pick the one that kind of scares you the most, the one you're not even sure you can answer. And step 3, make that question the focus of your first real piece of research. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. Your irreplaceability doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from finding the unique questions that your specific experience, your unique perspective, and your own curiosity put you and only you in the position to answer. So the real question is, what's yours?